Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the invisible lines of code that are quietly making some of the biggest decisions of your life. And we're going to see how they're building a new and, honestly, a much more dangerous form of discrimination. So let's just start with this. What if the most important opportunities you get in life, or, the ones you don't get, are being decided by an automated system you can't see, you can't appeal, and you can't even begin to understand? This isn't some sci-fi future I'm talking about. This is happening right now to real people.
And this is the reality for people like Mary Louise. Think about it. She paid her rent on time for 16 years straight, but was still denied a home. Or Monica Douglas, trapped in an unsafe neighborhood after a shooting, all because a secret score locked her out of a better apartment. Or Carmen Arroyo, whose disabled son couldn't live with her because an algorithm flagged a dismissed minor charge from years ago. Look, these are not just unfortunate, isolated incidents. They're flares, warning us of a much bigger, systemic fire.
What these stories are really showing us is an invisible wall. It's not built with bricks and mortar, it's built with data. And it's a very modern barrier that has a name that should send a chill down your spine, because it echoes a really dark chapter of our history.
It's called algorithmic redlining. It's basically the digital successor to that old racist practice of literally drawing red lines on a map to deny services to entire communities. The goal is exactly the same: exclusion. But the method? Oh, it's way more sophisticated, it scales instantly, and it's dangerously hidden from view.
See, the old redlining was blatant. You could find the maps, you could point to the lines. But this new redlining? It's buried deep inside a black box. It's not about what neighborhood you live in anymore. It's about your data profile. And here's the kicker. It can produce the exact same discriminatory results without ever once looking at your race.
The scholar James A. Allen just nails it here. We are living in a scored society. Right now, every single one of us is being quietly rated and ranked by systems we know absolutely nothing about. And these hidden scores are then used to decide our access to the most fundamental things in life: a place to live, a loan for a car, even insurance.
So you have to ask, how in the world did we get here? Now, the easy answer is to just blame the AI, right? Oh, it's biased AI. But that's a huge misconception, and it misses the real, much deeper problem.
The thing is, the algorithms themselves are really just incredibly powerful pattern-finding machines. So the problem isn't the tool. It's the material we're giving it to work with. It's the data.
There's a principle in computer science that's as old as the hills. Garbage in, garbage out. It means that if the data you feed into a system is flawed or biased or just plain wrong, then the results that come out the other end will be just as flawed. It doesn't matter how smart the algorithm is. And let me tell you, the data being fed into these housing systems is far from clean. These systems are learning from huge data sets that basically mirror decades of real-world inequality. So they're learning from eviction records, which we know disproportionately hit minority communities. They're learning from criminal records, which are shaped by biased policing. They're learning from credit histories that were created during the era of, you guessed it, redlining. They're even looking at where you've lived and what you buy. Every single data point is just a reflection of a society that hasn't always been fair. And that's the new reality right there. Your digital footprint, every website you visit, every purchase you make, every place you go, all of it becomes the raw material used to build a profile of you that can either open doors or slam them shut in your face. So this leads to a really big question. How can an algorithm discriminate if it's been specifically programmed not to use race? Well, the answer lies in a really clever and, frankly, insidious workaround. It's a concept called proxy discrimination. The algorithm is smart. It learns that certain pieces of data that look totally neutral on the surface, like your zip code, are actually amazing predictors for protected things like race. It doesn't need to know your race if it can find something else that does the job just as well. And the zip code example is just perfect. Here's how it works. You tell the algorithm, hey, you are forbidden from using race. So the algorithm goes to work churning through millions of data points, and it discovers something incredible. Zip code is a fantastic predictor of who's a risk. Now, why is that? It's because decades of segregationist policies in America mean that your zip code is one of the strongest indicators of your race. The algorithm doesn't know the history, it doesn't care about the why, it just sees a powerful correlation and uses the proxy. And in doing so, it effectively launders discrimination through data.
Okay, so this brings us to a huge practical problem. When one of these algorithms rejects you for a loan or an apartment, what do you do? How do you possibly fight back? I mean, how do you hold a system accountable when you can't even see how it made its decision? Well, this is what's known as the black box problem. These machine learning models are often so insanely complex with so many millions of variables that even the data scientists who built them can't fully explain why it made one specific decision. And on top of that, companies guard these algorithms as trade secrets, which shields them from any kind of real public or regulatory oversight.
And as the Consumer Federation of America points out here, it's pretty simple. You can't fix what you can't see. If there's no transparency, you as an individual can't challenge an unfair decision. And regulators can't audit these systems for bias. Accountability becomes completely impossible. So where does that leave us? Honestly, we're at a crossroads. We're facing a really critical choice about what kind of digital society we want to live in. And the path we take is going to hinge on one single foundational element. Research from the Geneva Association maps out two possible futures. Now, they frame it around insurance, but this applies to everything. The first path is called insurance at two speeds. It's a world of digital distrust. If you don't want to share all your data, you get penalized, you pay more. This just leads to less competition and hurts everyone. But the other path is a tale of trust. This is where companies act as ethical stewards of our data. And that path leads to huge benefits for society. It's clear, trust is the new currency.
Now, here's the good news. We are not doomed to end up in that dystopian future. We are not powerless here. There are concrete, real steps we can take, things we can demand, to build a much fairer system. First, we have to demand real transparency, meaningful explanations for these decisions. Second, regulators have to start auditing for discriminatory impact, not just looking for discriminatory intent. Third, we should be championing better, fairer data, like a history of on-time rent and utility payments. And finally, we all need to know and use the rights we already have under laws like the Fair Housing Act.
Because here's the bottom line. The great civil rights battles of this century aren't just going to be fought for access to voting booths or lunch counters. They're going to be fought for access to the algorithms that are now governing our lives. The new frontier for justice is digital. It's in the code. And all of this leaves us with the one defining question for our automated age. When a single line of code denies a family a home, when an algorithm carries forward a century of inequality, who's responsible? Is it the programmer who wrote the code? The company that owns the algorithm? The landlord who chose to use the tool? Or is it all of us, the society that created the biased data in the first place? That's the conversation we absolutely need to be having right now.